Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to Nonfiction November. That's a venerable BookTube tradition that was started by Olive at a Book Olive, in which you are encouraged to read more nonfiction. Some if you read none, more if you read some, to celebrate all the wonderful variety and invitingness of nonfiction that tends to get overshadowed on a platform like BookTube that is so fiction-centric. And the other day, in order to kick off Nonfiction November, I gave you a starter kit of general nonfiction. A general nonfiction starter kit of books that, although they're nonfiction, will certainly pull you in, where it's not a perfect place to put your toe in the water. And the first book on that list was Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud, which is a graphic novel, black and white graphic novel that shows you not only how graphic novel sequential art works in ways and in a depth that you probably didn't think of before you read it, but also is fantastic reading on its own. And today I want to give you another starter kit. I want to give you another starter kit that builds off that first item in the previous starter kit. I want to give you a graphic novel starter kit of nonfiction. We think of graphic novels as, comic books, as superhero comic books. By far predominates the field and the medium. And a lot of those are really good. I have certainly talked about a lot of great superhero graphic novels and collections on this channel. But I want to recommend 10 great nonfiction works that are done in graphic novel form, in case you like the form and maybe find it a less intimidating way to get into the subject. The first one that I want to do, a lot of these have many volumes. Don't be intimidated by that. Just start with the first one. And if you really like the first one, you'll be happy that there are others in the series. The first one is like that. It has multiple volumes, I think 4 by now. It's The Arab of the Future by Riad Sattouf. And the first book deals with his childhood in France and Syria and Libya, and the all of the vivid memories. It's all done in a very direct and simple way. Absolutely pulls you in. It's absolutely enthralling storytelling. And I don't know that it would be dramatically improved if it weren't in graphic novel form. This is a perfect example right off the bat on this list of something that I think the creator of it really taps into the strengths of the graphic novel format. So I strongly recommend it. It's contemporary fiction, or contemporary nonfiction. So some of the headlines, some of the figures in it, Muammar Gaddafi, for instance, will be known to you, only you'll see them in a different light when you read this book. Then the next one is by John Hendrix, and it's called The Faithful Spy. Just came out last year, or maybe the year before that. It's a graphic novel about Dietrich Bonhoeffer, an intensely religious man who also plotted to kill Adolf Hitler. And this is if some of you maybe have read Bonhoeffer biographies or maybe some of his collected writings, this is a totally different way to look at the character of Bonhoeffer and at the events around him. And it changes the emphasis on that narrative in the way that graphic novel approaches often do. And the graphic novel approach also allows, if it's in the hands of a skilled creator, it allows that creator to do things that the written word can't do. In other words, obviously, to rely on images, to rely on what the images can do. And Faithful Spy does that all throughout, but especially at the end. At the end of the book, some of the images at the end of the graphic novel will stay with you forever, and they aren't verbal. I strongly, strongly recommend it. The third one, we'll hark back to The Arab of the Future, because this is along the same lines, only much better known to most of you, is Persepolis by Marjane Satrapi, which starts out with her childhood, her family experiencing the Khomeini Revolution. And again, like with The Arab of the Future, there are many volumes that you can go on and read more, but the first one gives you an idea of what you're getting into, with deceptively childlike illustration style and a razor-sharp narration to it that is just pulled me right in. And all these things did. And keep in mind, that's no mean feat, considering that I like my graphic novels to be superhero-related. All these things overcame that resistance in 2 seconds. So if it did it for me, I'm sure it will do it for you. Then number 4 technically counts as a graphic novel, technically squeaks in. It's actually children's. But they're children's hardcovers, but they're not made for little children. They're made for, I would argue they're made for everybody, but they're made for older children who are starting to read seriously. And the series is called Earth Before Us. And so far, there have been 3 books in the series. They're by Abby Howard, and book number 1 was Dinosaur Empire, then Ocean Renegades, and then Mammal Takeover. And as you can tell from the titles, these are illustrated graphic novels of the development of life on Earth. And they're amazing. They're amazing. They're amazingly done. They're also very funny, because they take the form of a guided tour that a little girl is getting from Miss Larnan is her name. She's slightly on the weird side. Her enthusiasm is slightly over the top, in just the way that you want, in a purely nerdy way that you want. And it's delightful. These books are so crammed with information, and yet you don't feel it. You don't feel it at all. You're just enjoying the ride. So I would recommend any of them, but if you're interested, you could start with Dinosaur Empire, certainly, and go from there. Then this next one, number 5, it came out this year. It came out just recently. It's called Charlotte Brontë Before Jane Eyre, by Glynnis, Fawkes, and Alison Bechdel. And it's about exactly what the title says. It's about Charlotte Brontë and the Brontë sisters, and Branwell Brontë, before fame, before literature found them. So thwarted, desperate, confused lives on the moors and as tutors, and it's terrific. Once again, as with Persepolis, and as with a few of the things on this list, it's drawn in a very childlike way. Very simple, light washes of pastels to give a sense of the color, and I loved it. Absolutely loved it. As soon as I was done with it, I knew that it was going to go on my shelf with my Brontë books, that they would not just be in one door and out the other. I think you will love it too, especially if you love the Brontës. This is indispensable literature if you love the Brontës. Then number 6 is something we've also seen on this channel. It's Moonbound by Jonathan Fetter-Vorm. And it is an illustrated, it's a graphic novel depiction of not just the Apollo moon landing missions that had their anniversary in 2019, but also mankind voyaging into space. With different shadings of color for different eras and different parts of that story, and so much detail, and almost something that could almost be called a moral through line that made it, well, I read every single space flight book that I could get my hands on in 2019. I'm a big fan. I was a big fan of all the NASA programs, and I read almost all of those that I could get my hands on, and Moonbound was my favorite one. And it's a graphic novel. I think it will pull you right in. I think you will really like it. Then number 3 is also recent, might have been this year. It's The 3 Escapes of Hannah Arendt by Ken Krimstein. And it's a graphic novel about the life of the great writer and philosopher Hannah Arendt. The 3 escapes are 3 different incidents in her life, but we get everything else too. We get all the people, and we get a very good breakdown of her ideas and her literary career. Certainly a better breakdown of those things than I was expecting in a graphic novel, because I admit I still operate, even this long after Art Spiegelman's Mouse appeared, I still operate under the assumption that graphic novels are going to be sort of simplistic, even though I know they're not. It's just and if I can feel that loving the genre, then just imagine what the normal person feels. No wonder that half of these things are obviously written for adults, and yet you'll find them filed in the children's section at your bookstore. So The 3 Escapes of Hannah Arendt, I strongly recommend, even if you've never read Hannah Arendt, and a great fringe benefit of the book is that you will read her when you're done with this, if you haven't. Then number 8 is a little older. It's The Plot by Will Eisner, who was the creator of The Spirit, the comic character The Spirit, but who did non-superhero, non-adventure graphic novels for his entire career. And they are sublime. All of them are. They are absolutely incredible. But the plot stands out for me, and I wanted to recommend it to you. It's about the protocols of the Elders of Zion. It's about the creation of a massive fake libel against the Jewish people. And Eisner studied it. He studied the whole story of the protocols. He studied all the characters involved, and he renders it in beautiful artwork, just beautiful, poignant, human artwork that I don't know if the plot is still in print. I didn't check before I made this video, but you should find it because it's amazing. And it's an introduction to Will Eisner's non-spirit graphic novel work. It will open your eyes to a whole library of stuff. This guy worked a lot. There are a lot of books out there. Then number 9, I've also recommended on this channel just recently. I saw it in a library tour, but I've recommended it many times as well. I also wrote about it. It's Anne Frank's diary, the graphic adaptation. which was adapted by Eyre Folman and illustrated by David Polonsky, and is an adaptation of Anne Frank's diary, which you'd think it would be the last thing in the world you could put in graphic novel form. And it just goes to show the incredible strength of the graphic novel form if it's used intelligently, because this is incredibly moving. And once again, just as with The Faithful Spy, a lot of the things that move you in this adaptation of Anne Frank's diary are not verbal. The adapter, Eyre Folman, uses more and more of the diary as the adaptation goes on. He lets Anne speak more and more. But a lot of the real gut punch emotional moments in this graphic novel are not verbal. They are the illustrations. I could go on and on. I could name half a dozen of them that are not part of the diary at all and will move you to tears. So even if you've read Anne Frank's diary many times, even if you think you know the book really well, you want to get this adaptation. It will really work on you. And then the last one that I want to mention, last one on this nonfiction graphic novel starter kit, is, again, the first book in a multi-book series. Don't let that intimidate you. If the first book appeals to you, you have all those books to look forward to. And if it doesn't, no harm, no foul. The first book here is called Buddha, Volume 1. Kapilavastu is the subtitle of Volume 1, and it's by Osamu Tezuka. Osamu Tezuka. And it is, the series is meant to be, a massively detailed graphic novel illustration, adaptation of the life of the Buddha, Siddhartha Buddha. And like most Westerners, I did not know the fine details of that story, and certainly would not have known the dramatic high points and low points. We're raised from the cradle with the dramatic stories of Moses and Jesus, but not Buddha. So this was new territory for me, and it worked tremendously well. I never for a minute felt that I needed to know that story ahead of time to get what was going on in this book, much less to be moved by it. So by the same token, assuming that you don't know a lot of those details either, it's going to work on you the way it did on me. So there you go. That is technically 10 books, although some of these are doorways into longer series. So there are a lot more books here if you want. And that is today's starter kit for Nonfiction November. Nonfiction can be a little intimidating. I thought, what better way to break that intimidation than with perhaps a whole bunch of starter kits. So this is the first of them. This is the graphic novels for nonfiction. So I'm going to wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.